Greetings to all who have tuned into this YouTube talk today. We are going to be talking to our club's Vice President, Ambassador Dr. Josephine Ojiambo. As you're aware, this year our club has turned 90, and I'm honored and privileged to be serving as the 90th President of Rotary Club of Nairobi. And in order to document all the incredible work which is being done by our club during this anniversary, we are speaking to our prominent members. And today, as mentioned, we are speaking to Ambassador Dr. Josephine Ojiambo, who's our Vice President and also President nominee. So here's a brief introduction, a brief bio of Ambassador Dr. Josephine Ojiambo. Dr. Ojiambo is a distinguished public and diplomatic service career and has deep engagement in a range of significant national, African, and global issues. She is a champion of global partnerships in the implementation of sustainable development goals, with a strong emphasis on vulnerability, including ensuring refugee and migrant rights, gender equality, and reproductive health and rights. Ambassador Dr. Josephine Ojiambo serves as the Rotary International Representative to UNEP and UNICEF. She's also a member of the Rotary Emergency Response Committee, where she serves as the Rotary Liaison to the National Business Compact Committee on COVID-19, the NBCCC, a committee situated at the second tier of the government's National Emergency Response Committee. Here, Ambassador Dr. Josephine Ojiambo's tasks largely focus on water, sanitation, and hygiene. She was the president of the Rotary Club of Westminster West in 2016 to 2017, and is the current vice president of the Rotary Club of Nairobi during our 90th year. She is experienced in multilateral relations and has served as the Deputy Secretary General at the Commonwealth Secretariat in London, a multilateral organization that brings together 54 countries in 5 different regions of the world, with a combined population of more than 2.4 billion people. Ambassador Dr. Ojiambo currently sits on the governing bodies of several influential international advisory groups and think tanks, including the Rotary International Board, the Peter Ojiambo Foundation, the Medical Women's International Association, the Charities Commissions of UK, the Women's Democracy Network of the International Republican Institute, the Pan-African Women's Network, the International Council of Caring Communities, the Fund for the Disabled of Kenya, and associates with the Green Belt movement founded by Wangari Maathai. She is a member of the Resource Development Committee at the Aga Khan University in Nairobi, Kenya. She is also a special advisor to the President and Executive Director of Commonwealth Business Women, CBW International, and Honorary President of CBW Kenya. She's an adjunct lecturer in the Department of Population, Reproductive Health, and Community Resource Management of the School of Public Health, Kenyatta. Ambassador Dr. Ojiambo has a master's degree from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, Israel, and a bachelor's degree in medicine and surgery from the University of Nairobi, Kenya. She also has certified skills in international relations and diplomacy and mainstreaming women in development, amongst others. Born in Kenya, she is fluent in English and Swahili, has working knowledge of French, and is a mother of 4. And welcome, Ambassador Dr. Josephine.
Thank you very much, President Ritesh. It's really an honor to be here with you on this interview as we celebrate 90 years of our Rotary Club of Nairobi. Thank you for the warm welcome.
Thank you. And Ambassador Dr. Josephine, can I please ask you a couple of questions?
Yes, I'm looking forward to that. Let's talk.
Perfect. So the first question I have for you is what initially attracted you to Rotary in general, and in particular Rotary Club of Nairobi?
Thank you very much. So Rotary in general, Rotary was a household name for me, even at a very young stage of my life. My mother was a member of the Interactors Club, and she spoke to us often about the work that she did in terms of education, because that was a major pillar for them then, and their community involvement. So I heard a lot about it from her. But the person who really got me going towards Rotary was our own club member, past President Eric Crystal, now deceased. Eric was a good friend of both my mother and father. And in the early 2000s, when I was back from home and doing lots of public health work, he used to ask me about how I could better direct my activities. So apart from being actively involved on his family planning private sector board, he asked me if I would join him at a couple of Rotary meetings. And so I did. And I came to the lunches at the Lyco Regency. And I was impressed. I was impressed by the dearth of projects and by the active committees that would get together after the meeting and discuss the next step in the projects. But I was also impressed because Eric spoke to me about the role of Rotarian in society. So really, his mentorship was what attracted me to not just Rotary, but to the Rotary Club of Nairobi. And he was a good mentor. He took time to induct me. We went through the manual. He brought me to meet with the friends that he, of course, had in the Rotary Club, where he was a very senior, well-established and well-regarded member. And that's what attracted me to the club. Thank you.
That's absolutely wonderful. And I'm very glad to know that the individual who you mentioned is responsible for your journey into Rotary, although you did have an upbringing surrounded by Rotary information, thanks to your mother, is actually past President Dr. Eric Cristal. What a wonderful Rotarian.
Yes, he was a wonderful Rotarian, not just because of his dedication to Rotary Club per se. His perspective on humanity and serving humanity went beyond just serving people in need, but committing himself and his life to giving back. So with Eric, every day and every conversation was committed to how can you improve the society around you. And as a result, it was easy for me to get on board, and particularly community service. Eric was interested in public health. And so together we got going in terms of community service in Rotary. And I also worked with him on puppetry and animation of several community activities. So that was my foundation in Rotary Club.
Oh, wonderful. So to add to that, we do look forward to your service as our future president, as your president nominee. And currently you're serving as vice president. Perhaps you could tell us some more about the roles you have played in Rotary, and especially our club.
Oh, all right. Okay. So our club. So those were the early 2000s, 2003. And I was a member of the Community Service Committee. And there were people like George Owo who were on that committee who really were the ones that anchored me in the committee. And so we did a lot of interesting work. But what I remember most vividly was the work that we did on the elimination of polio. The Rotary Club of Nairobi played a sterling role in advancing polio elimination in Kenya. At that time, our efforts were steered forward by Lotte Darcy. Darcy Lotte put himself at the helm with our support, and he managed a national campaign. So we were sent to particular areas in Nairobi to work with health professionals in terms of eliminating polio. I was sent to a clinic just outside Westlands, which was there for, which later was known as Safaricom. Safaricom had a little office just next to what is now Sarit Center. And we worked there with the health professionals and did outreach from that base. For me, that was one of the most exciting times. We spent a lot of time engaging with the international community and amongst ourselves. Another kingpin in that polio elimination exercise was Professor Fred Were, who is also a member, now perhaps a little less active in his retirement. He and Dr. Lord and Darcy were able to stir our club forward. I'll move forward. That was my beginning and foundation work in our club. Beyond that, I want to let you know that I continued in the club until at some point I went into diplomacy. And that's not to understate anything else that we were doing. We had lovely World Understanding Day. We had many engagements in the club at national level. We did lots of water, sanitation, and hygiene projects even then. We had very many projects steered by members such as Mike Eldon in our club. And I remember our project where we had an integrated intervention around agriculture, I remember the growing of bananas and a number of elements that were put together under the project that he and Evelyn undertook, a sterling project which I visited not too long ago. So those were their reflections of the past. But going forward, I then left the country and went to New York. And at New York, I was also in New York at the UN. I was also involved in Rotary. When I was there, we had Rotary Day at the UN, and it was a marvelous event. The whole UN compound was decked with Rotary colors. And we were able to visit the General Assembly and speak about the founding of the UN and the role that Rotary played. And that year, we actually set up and put in place many monuments in recollection of Rotary's support to the founding of the UN, which is, of course, in history. But we were able to put up pictures within the UN headquarters and within the press center and the media center of the United Nations. I was also a member of the Rotary Club of New York downtown, and we would meet very often. As often as I could, I traveled a lot and continued in my Rotary journey. When I moved from New York to London, I found an even more vibrant Rotary family. I was a member of the Rotary Club of Westminster West, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that, but also worked in the district in London in the Peace Committee. And that was great. I met people such as Judith Diamond and late Rawal, Girish Rawal, and people that we know here, including Babu Rao, brother of Sharad Rao. But we did a lot of work around the diplomatic community in London. And I established something called Peace Ambassadors, or Ambassadors for Peace. And they were Rotary Commonwealth Ambassadors for Peace. I also worked with people in the district to put in place something that is called Indus Park, a park being put in place on the border of India and Pakistan, a monument to peace. We did a lot of work also along the Commonwealth Heads of Governments meetings, and I was steering most of those activities. London was very busy. Our district had meetings every week, and being in leadership meant that you needed to participate, but they were engaging meetings. I went to many retreats and workshops, and then came back home. And there would be no better place than my own Rotary Club. I wasn't going to come back to any other. I have lots of allegiance and a lot to be happy for about our club. So I came back home, joined our club, rejoined our club. And I remember at that time, President Ritesh, she was secretary, but she helped me to get my documents sent all the way from London here. And within a short time, I was re-engaging. And indeed, ours is a vibrant club. So there have been lots of activities since in the club, and you're aware of them. Many of them in the preparation to be a vice president along your side, and many more during the year of my vice presidency. And we'll speak about them. I know you want to know a little bit about polio. We did some work in polio elimination, putting together the celebrations during this year, and sharing with the rest of the community in Africa around the certification of Africa as polio-free. I continue to do some work in our club around COVID-19 and education around COVID-19 for health professionals on the front line. I've done a lot of work on the COVID National Emergency Committee, where we had an intense 1 year of putting in place hand washing stations together with the behavior change communication in all the counties and monitoring the same. And we continue to put projects in place. So that's been my walk in Rotary.
Well, what a walk it's been. And this journey has been very beneficial to us because you have come back with so much allegiance and so many friends from across the world. And we are able to do high impact projects as a result of your wonderful friendships across the world. So Ambassador Dr. Josephine, I want to ask you about your memorable moments as president during the Rotary Club of UK, of Westminster West in the UK. But before I get to that question, since we've touched a bit on your roles in Nairobi, I think it's important for myself to also ask you, do you have recollections of the wonderful event we had in Nairobi in 2018, the Rotary Day at United Nations? If you could share a few anecdotes about that, And also tell us a little bit about your role with UNEP and UNICEF.
Okay. Thank you for bringing back the memory of Rotary Day at the UN. That was a lovely event. And I'm sure that Dr. Gitoho continues to reflect on the same, together, of course, with Jo Otin, who was her co-chair, and yourself, whom I would meet every Saturday in the planning committee meetings when we walked towards actually hosting the event. I want to let you know that a number of us pulled together around Dr. Gitoho, and I in particular just come back from London. And when I did, one of the gentlemen who was central to that UN Day and is now on our international board, Peter Kyle, asked me to join and work with Sally. And that for me was one of the greatest and best things I could do. It helped me to dive back into Rotary. At the outset, in order that we could access the grounds, I visited with the Director General of the UN, actually even before the current president of Ethiopia, Madam Wok. And the gentleman who was DG was holding office temporarily. I provided him with some background information on our upcoming event, which was then sent to Madam Wok. When she got in, she was briefed on it. And she didn't stay long enough, but I had 2 meetings with her to prepare for the event. And then she handed it over to a lady called Nana, who was a former foreign minister from Ghana, whom I'd worked with at the Commonwealth and knew very well. And she's the one who was in office when we hosted the Rotary Day there. So I had some preliminary meetings with her to brief her on the upcoming event. And even on the day, as she walked to the particular hall, I spoke to her in the morning and gave guidance as she walked to the hall. So that was one activity. And that came really under the protocol arm. But there were other things we did. We organized for the incoming flights and reception, to ensure that we were at the airport to receive our guests and usher them. This was very intense. At some point, we needed to put people on rotation at the airport, make sure that they're there with KTB, the tourism board, to welcome them and give them a Maasai welcome. But beyond that, for the dignitaries, we had to book the VIP lounge, which I did, and make sure that we were present to usher them through the VIP lounge. And of course, with our president, Barry Racine, I was able to organize so that we went on the air side of the airport and used that hatch to connect ourselves to the incoming flight, and we received him on the flight. He hadn't even stepped out of the flight. We were there to receive him. And Sandy always tells the story of how she was holding the bouquet of flowers, and one of these very well-known footballers came up and thought it's his flowers, which indeed they weren't. They were for our president. So we got our president off the flight on the air side, right out of the cabin. Well, we also saw the guests off. But you see, the experience doing all this work gave me a first-hand ability to welcome and meet and greet all the guests who came from the international destinations into Kenya for our lovely Rotary Day at the UN. Some of the particular challenges included visas. And there was one young man who traveled from Uganda. He was a refugee. And so because of the issues of refugee rights, on his arrival in Nairobi, he was not allowed access. They said, go back and get your visa before you come in. And it became very difficult. But I was able to use the good offices that I have built over time to speak with people in the Department of Immigration. And we were able to process a visa for him in less than 24 hours. But it was genuine. He was coming to share his experience as a Rotarian, a young Rotaractor, even in spite of the fact that he was a refugee, a startling story. And the government listened and gave him his temporary visa, and he was able to join the meeting. I think for many, that was one of the real successes of that meeting. So those was my reflections, but I also recollect the work that we did together with you, fundraising, organizing the media to make sure that the meeting took place, ensuring that the events would run on time. I remember the challenge with getting an evening venue all the way out at Village Market, and a number of other things. And then we eventually went to, I think, the hotel in Westlands, the Movenpick. But everything worked well at the end of the day. And I'm so glad that our club had a lot to do with the success of Rotary at the UN. This was the first time that this day would be held in Africa, and a first for us as the Rotary Club of Nairobi being in charge of the event. It is great history that we made around that event. Lots of learnings on innovation, lots of learnings on the role of young people in terms of Rotary, and lots of engagement with private sector and the international community. What a lovely event.
That was absolutely a lovely event and unforgettable. And, all these dignitaries who are landing in our beautiful country, they could not be a better welcome than one by yourself, oh, wonderful Ambassador Dr. Josephine. How wonderful.
It is my duty, my pleasant duty, and something that I'm well trained in, having been trained in international relations and diplomacy by the government. So it was my duty and pleasure. Yes.
You're a true resource to Rotary. And now we will touch upon your role in UNEP and UNICEF too. If you don't mind, would you like to highlight some of that before we proceed to learn more about your presidency at Westminster West?
Okay. I want to just say that it sounds like a big role, I'm not belittling it at all. I'm not underrating it, but really it's a role that many Rotarians who are interested in should look to undertaking. I want to, in a manner of speaking, demystify it. I must say, though, I have a head start, having been an ambassador of government to the United Nations and having consulted severally for the UN. I kind of know the institution inside out. But even if I didn't, Rotary provides so many inductions and grounding for those that it appoints as its representatives to the United Nations. So I'm honored to be Rotary's representative to UNICEF and to the UN system at large. And so in those two capacities, I work with the Office of the Representative of UNICEF in Kenya and the Office of the Director General, United Nations in Kenya, who today is a lady friend whom I know well when she was Foreign Minister of Sierra Leone. Her name is Zainab Bangura. So those are the offices that I call on. It so happens that the current representative of UNICEF is someone I also worked with in New York. Her name is Maniza Zaman. I'll tell you a little bit about the work we do. There we are really looking for opportunities to engage with the UN around Rotary's strengths that relate to child survival and development. As you know, polio is one that everybody knows about, but it's always education. So is WASH. So is the empowerment of women, especially the economic empowerment of women, and also the issues of environment as they relate to the future of the planet, the future that we'll hand over to our children. There are more things. There's the issues of refugees, there's the issue of stopping child and girl trafficking, and a number of very important themes are mutual. Beyond that, we look for opportunities to work together, and these opportunities, of course, to benefit Rotarians in terms of their learning about the UN system and about the mandate of UNICEF, but also opportunities where we can mutually support each other in programming within the country. So that's basically the role that I play at UNICEF. When it comes to the UN system at large, most of my interventions go through the Director General's office, and I give support to any other office in the UN in Kenya as required. So not too long ago, we had another series of interviews around a day at the UN. It was online, and I was able to bring the Director General of the United Nations in Kenya to interview at that event. I hope that's enough information.
That is truly quite a role you have, and you've elaborated, well, not quite, but in very brief terms. But I am actually aware of the magnitude of the work being carried out by yourself in that capacity. And I would like also to ask you, related to that, you're involved with the Safe Return to Schools. Could you please share something about this initiative?
Thank you. So, I started off by talking about the long relationship between Rotary and UNICEF. And that relationship, apart from the achievement in terms of eliminating polio, brought us together in a way where we can program. So the Safe Return to Schools is a strengthening of that relationship. And it's really been put in place to peel back or to support the school systems as we peel back the COVID-19 restrictions, or rather the COVID-19 compliance framework. So it was put in place towards the end of last year when we realized that at some point in time, we needed to have the schools reopen because children were losing out on many years of education, millions of children globally, and several in Kenya. So we thought to ourselves, there must be a way to reopen schools that's safe. You'll also recall towards the end of last year, we began to hear stories of several thousands of young girls having been raped, having early pregnancies, and of course, many of whom we know would not benefit when the schools reopened. But beyond that, we also heard a lot about the mental health challenges for young people in the community during lockdown. Lockdown affected many children and their families. So we designed a program, sitting down with a team led by our partnership advisor, Amos, and a team of committed Rotarians, and all Rotarians are committed, they're people of action. And we put together interventions around, one, ensuring water, sanitation, and hygiene, but also addressing the mental challenges that these youngsters were facing, maybe because of violation or simply because they've been away from the school and formal system for a long time. This intervention also draws on board teachers, parents, and opinion leaders. So WASH in schools is a strength that we have. And as you know, WASH is a central point in the prevention of COVID-19. So what we're doing is we have a pillar in the project where in the first phase, we go in an emergency type mode, putting in PPEs, the masks, the soap, the sanitation, and on top of that, hand wash stations. But in the second phase, the partnership with UNICEF allows UNICEF to now build the WASH infrastructure, build proper structures for latrines, for basins, put in place proper receptacles for bins, and also ensure that the toilets are dedicated to girls as opposed to boys with dedicated space so that we can give girls the privacy that they require. But in so doing, also educate both gender about the gender relations that they themselves will be living through, and give the boys as much education on the needs that are gender related of girls as for themselves. We also are putting in place infrastructure for the physically challenged so that young children who have a limitation that's a mobility limitation are able to use the same ablution blocks, because we'll have rails and ramps at the right height, UNICEF specified and Government of Kenya specified, and beyond that, even toilets designed to assist those with a physical or mobility challenge. So that's what the project is about. And then I just want to say something about the concerns for girls and for young people. We have a component, the second pillar of the project, called Ending Violence Against Children, which is twofold. One is the Spot It, Stop It campaign. In this campaign, we are working with Rotaractors and interactors in the schools and online to pass messages about the need to stop violence against children. We are also, in its second part, bringing on board a team called the Loving Classrooms, which has got positive behavior change messaging so that we can get young people to accommodate diversity, accommodate difference, respect authority, and therefore we don't wait for violation. Rather, we speak about positive behavior from the get-go. That is a little bit about the project.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing this very important and valuable information. And I know for a fact that you're involved in so many more projects which are very high impact. And there are quite a number I would like to raise, but first I'll just ask you about one which is quite recent. And it's our partnership with the Security Workers Union, which is very important. If you would kindly share some information about this particular project which you have initiated with Rotary.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. So the Security Workers Union, it's actually called Kenya Private Security Workers Union, is a union that I got engaged with about 15 years ago. Initially, it was a very nascent, or I would say a very small team of security workers who got together to support themselves, one, on the loss of job, which many face in a unionized manner, but also to provide simple welfare inputs, health, education, and the last benefits of a worker for the security guards working in Nairobi. Many of them live up country and just come to Nairobi for what we call kibarua, informal jobs, and find themselves working as security guards. So over time, they have managed to put together their own circle, and there's a check-off system where every month the guards put 200 shillings into a basket, but this money over time has multiplied and is being very well managed by the guards themselves and provides for them their welfare needs, including, like I've said, last rites. During COVID-19, it was something of a sadness, a disappointment to understand that although there were lots of projects in place for frontline workers, people forgot about the guards, particularly those in private sector. Yet they're the ones who guard our offices, our shopping malls, our homes. They open the gates for us. They're there when we want to open a door. They're there sometimes on the floor, at the lift. They're there as you enter your office. Nobody thought about them. They raised their voice, and I thought to myself, let's take this to the National Business Compact Coalition, which you have mentioned, on COVID-19 or on Corona. So when we did, the NBCC saw the opportunity and saw the need and provided a number of masks, actually several thousands of masks, soap, and also some hand sanitizer. And in a manner of speaking, like we've done before, we organized an event where we could give these items to the guards and speak to them about protecting their health during COVID-19. So on a particular day, President Ritesh and myself, accompanied by PP Anne Van Laue and other Rotaractors, visited an office of the Kenya Private Security Workers Union and handed over to them the PPEs, and they were delighted. And as a result, they're asking, what more can we do together? How can we work, first of all, to help them do more education of their members across the country? What would they need to improve their database on their members so that they know where every member is in terms of location and what their health status is? And how can we beam welfare trainings on keeping your health, on how to keep the health of your family, and on other concerns, COVID being one. They requested HIV/AIDS as another, prevention of malaria, and other public health concerns. So this is a project that we are growing, and we're looking forward to, with your support, President Ritesh, being able to provide them at least one laptop so that they can begin to collect data on the location of their members across the country. It's a very large union now with several thousand members, and then using the same to be able to beam education to them on managing their health. Thank you. That's a very interesting project.
Thank you for this wonderful initiative. And definitely we are going to hand over a laptop to them very soon. And we look forward to the partnership with them. They're doing such a phenomenal job. And you're absolutely right that they more or less are frontline when it comes to situations where they're actually allowing individuals access into buildings and also measuring temperatures and all that during the times of COVID. So naturally, we do have to also look out for our fellow brothers and sisters in that field. Now, a very interesting question for you. You were the president of the Rotary Club of Westminster West in the UK. Perhaps you could share some of your memorable moments of service with us?
Yes, there were lots of memorable moments, and I'll speak about one in particular. As you are aware, the Commonwealth has a meeting once every 2 years for heads of government. During the year 2017, the CHOGM was held in London, and the meeting took place at the Queen Elizabeth II Conference Center. In the run-up to that meeting, my club, the Rotary Club called Westminster West, reached out to a school, a music school on the outskirts of the north of London, and got together with that school and members of the music fraternity across the globe We brought people who play the brass band from Jamaica. We got people who play the wind instruments from Asia, from India in particular. We got drummers from Kenya and Zambia. We got dancers from North America to animate. We got the youngsters to play the guitar, to play the trumpet, to play the drums, and we put together a very large animated, or I could say, opening with a beautiful repertoire of sounds from across the globe. And we called it Rotary Commonwealth Drumming for Peace. And we had Rotarians as part of this initiative. I myself played the cymbals, and there were others playing the drums, some of them dressed up in their national outfits in saris, others wore sisal skirts and printed cloth, and it was amazing. You know, we had been speaking at the Commonwealth before I left London about using music to animate several themes. But this was the one time Rotary stole the show. So at the opening, in front of Her Majesty and the First Family, we were able to not only play, we got the whole audience up off their feet. Prime ministers, presidents, ministers, heads of government, up off their feet. They were dancing, clapping hands, and with us, animating the peace message at the opening of the Chogam. We stole the show. And you know, despite it being a large showstopper, I was so delighted that I was on the other side, but well hidden in a very large team of people playing the drum, the flute, and I was just part of it. It was amazing to see the faces on the other side, the expressions of joy at the way music can be used to animate peace. That was one of my most significant Rotary moments while in the United Kingdom.
That's absolutely wonderful. I hope there's some footage available so we can also benefit from that audiovisual, hopefully.
There are, and I'll share those with us the next time we get together. I'll be able to share them so people can see what I saw from the stage and see it from the other side, looking towards all of us.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. I look forward to that. And I'm sure there's a lot more you definitely have done in the UK when you were president of Westminster West. And you see, there's also other partnerships I'm aware of. I remember when past President Girish Raval of your Rotary Club of Westminster West, your earlier Rotary Club, visited Nairobi. He used to visit frequently, and he did in passing mention a couple of times a dear past member of our club who's now a member of his club, referring to you, of course, saying that he has strong ties with our club. But there was a project which was taking place someplace within Nairobi in Muguga School, I believe, if I'm not wrong, which was initiated by your club, Westminster West at the time, and Rotary Club of Westlands as well. So you have, on an ongoing basis, empowered a lot of public spaces, schools, and other facilities in Nairobi, whilst you were a member of Westminster West. And we thank you and congratulate you for those incredible efforts for bringing so many projects back home.
Yes, it was lovely. It was lovely. And I'll just mention very quickly, we put in place at Westlands Primary, we put in place a computer hub, or what you'd call an ICT, information, communication, and actually technology hub, supported by the club there and other inputs from other well-wishers. We also put in place a library in a girls' school in Laikipia. And we've also put in place another library in Mumias, 3 projects, all of them with Rotarians. And they're doing very, very well. We were able to do that during my time as president of the Rotary Club of Westminster West. The ICT hub has been well received. It's used to train not just children, but also teachers and provide them with skills. They are doing beyond the curriculum, they're doing extracurricular training up of youngsters in the use of computers and in the use of technology. The girls' school in Laikipia is in a very challenged community amongst the Samburu. So it's also being used to empower young girls, which is really great. And then the one in Mumias is a library, and it's well used both by the school community and the surrounding community. We've done a lot of projects actually from the Rotary Club of Westminster West. One of the other important projects is we worked with street children at a time when there was a lot of knife crime in London. We were able to work with one who was rehabilitated to go into the streets and meet with other children on the streets and talk to them about living the life that they were leading of crime. We got to hear the stories about children, about their early childhood memories of violation and how they chose then to choose a life of a life on the street and knife crime. But we were able to rehabilitate very many children. So it was interesting.
That's wonderful. That's absolutely wonderful. And rehabilitating individuals so that you can curtail the street crime, that's something unique. That's a very unique project. And coming back to schools, whilst you're mentioning to me that there were multiple schools which benefited from that project during the partnership between Westminster West and Rotary Club of Westlands, it actually makes me wonder how many schools have benefited due to your one-on-one approach and getting them projects, because this brings me back to Cheery project, which is taking place. There's so many projects. To be honest, I think we'll have to do yet another interview just to highlight on the other projects that you're involved with. The Cheery project as well is something which is very close to your heart and to our heart, actually. And would you like to mention something brief about this, since it's also related to a school?
Oh, yes, what a delight. The Cheery project. You will recall when our dear brother, Perry Ditch, visited us at the Rotary Club of Nairobi during a lunchtime fellowship, and he spoke to us about the Cheery project. And he asked if we would visit, and I did. I took it up. I was nominated by the club, and I went to Kibra, and we visited with the school. The first visit was just to get to know what was happening, and I found Rotarian Perry Ditch with his overalls, really, shirt rolled up, working with the school community. And he was actually training up youngsters using a computer-based system with a curriculum beamed from the United States on music, and teaching them to read music, to sing, to write. But in so engaging them, he was able then to bring on board other parts of the curriculum that the children could benefit from. In the same vein, he was also looking at the water, sanitation, and hygiene in that school and putting in place a feeding project. He reached out to us and we got together and agreed to partner with him. In the first phase, there were a few questions about land and land ownership. As you know, Kibra has many temporary people living on that land there. But we were able to speak to the community elders and the leadership and indeed confirmed that we are able to work in that school. So going forward, I know he is also going to look at how we can improve some of the physical structures in that school. But over time, we've been able to do a needs assessment for a borehole. We did a hydrological survey, and then we began writing up the global grant. In the first phase, we had a problem because while we were doing the community needs assessment, COVID-19 hit us. And so for 1 year, we could hardly go into Kibra. But now that they lifted it a little while ago, we were able to go and finish the needs assessment and then now sit at a table and write the global grant. So the global grant document is now written up. Actually, it's now with Perry's Club, and the new president of Perry's Club is having a look at the project. I'm hoping soon they respond, bring it back to us so that now we can launch a global grant bid for the Cheery project. And the delight about the Cheery project, I'll underscore, is that this is an initiative based on creativity, on music. And we know that nowadays many youngsters are creatives. He's using music as an entry point to the education system and the education of young people. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we look forward to that wonderful project. It's going to be an outstanding project, I'm sure. And I just want to ask you maybe one final question for this segment. And we will have to organize further talks. And it's probably going to be a series with you because I personally have a lot more questions to ask you about the projects and also about the various other leadership capacities which you are holding at the moment outside of Rotary and have held in the past. So your work in public health has meant that especially during this time of the COVID pandemic, you have contributed in a wide array of activities. And you have mentioned briefly about your role with the going back to school and also about the activities which took place on the onset of the pandemic when you initiated a district team. But could you share a little bit more about that?
All right. So I was thinking a little bit about the scope of the work I've done with schools, and just to say that the work in the Safe Return to Schools project initially was to target 400 schools, but already in the Lake Basin region we have already covered 800 schools. So we've hardly taken off and we've surpassed our target. So I can see us covering many thousands of schools and changing many hundreds of thousands of lives of children across Kenya. But we did a lot of work on COVID-19 too, when we involved ourselves as a club with the National Emergency Response Committee. And you asked what I did with that. Apart from the meetings where we would speak about locating our hand washing stations based on the needs assessment that was done by the teams on the Emergency Response Committee, I was nominated by the Emergency Response Committee to join the National Business Compact on COVID-19. That was a very busy committee. We would meet literally every day of the week, and we did a lot of things. We put in place incinerators in our major referral hospitals to manage the waste as byproducts of managing COVID-19. People take it for granted that the masks that we put on and take off are just to be dropped anywhere. No, there's specific protocols for managing waste around COVID-19. We also educated several communities across the country on how to wash hands. And we had to change people's behavior so people would learn and understand the need to wash hands regularly and to use sanitizers. We put in place hand washing stations in many places across the country, from peri-urban slum settlements to very far-flung rural areas to the northeast of Kenya, working in partnerships with the Red Cross and some of the Norwegian-based NGOs in the northern part of Kenya. We also launched projects on menstrual hygiene and educated several thousands of girls during this pandemic on the need for them to keep attending to menstrual hygiene. And we put in place services across many settings, both in schools and in communities. At one point, you will remember, it rained very hard last year, and many communities were caught in these floods, in what became flooding, and lost their homes. We went into Nyakach, and in the center of a flood-stricken area, we were able to put in COVID containment. We put in place hand washing stations because floods don't mean you really have clean water. We put in masks and we helped communities live in social halls at social distance, despite the fact that those were not their homes. And we helped them to go back to their own homes later. There was so much work done on that committee that we put in place a toolkit on how to manage hand washing in the face of a pandemic, which I'm hoping they will launch soon. We also held engagements with the Ministry of Health, and in fact, we hosted Cabinet Secretary Mutahi Kagwe on one of our Rotary fellowships as part of the work done by this committee. It was an exciting time because we were giving back to society. It kept us fully engaged. Thank you.
That's truly wonderful. Ambassador Dr. Josephine, I would like to say a huge thank you.
Okay, it's a low battery.
Thank you, Ambassador Dr. Josephine. And we will need to have a series with you because there are so many more questions I want to ask you. So in winding up, I just want to thank you, but also I want to recollect from my memories the amount of activities which I know and I have witnessed you have done just during this Rotary year. since July. I know you were in the forefront in championing with past District Governor Bimal Kantaria the Flowers of Hope. I know that you have been so active with all these activities which are taking place as a district initiative for hand wash and sanitation and provision of masks and food as well. I remember you immediately started following up with a gentleman, Dennis Segay, because you were instrumental in all that incredible amount of effort which went into the write-ups, which actually got him a Rotary scholarship, and you have mentored him so well. So the year started on a high note with a Rotary scholarship coming through our club thanks to your efforts. Immediately after that, there were so many activities. It was a flurry of activities. Not only are you also engaged with the health initiatives of the district, but the World Polio Day was absolutely incredible, which you chaired on behalf of the district, and also handed over a wheelchair at Gertrude's hospital. And there was a wonderful project which we are embarking on, which is a partnership with the University of Nairobi as well as other Rotary clubs in Europe. And that's multimedia training video. And we need to have a talk where you'll also elaborate a bit about this. But there's also another special partnership with, of course, Aga Khan Foundation. And there's far too much we have to talk about. So this is just to give the individuals watching a sneak peek into what's going to be our next talk, including some stories about the Commonwealth and your journey within the Commonwealth, and also the Commonwealth Women's chapter in Kenya. So thank you, Ambassador Dr. Josephine. I'm truly grateful that you're serving this Rotary as Vice President of Rotary Club of Nairobi during its 90th year, and also our President nominee. This is truly excellent news, not only for our club, but for Rotary District 9212. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, President Ritesh. And I just want to let you know, it has been an honor to serve as your Vice President. Every meeting and every engagement has really been a pleasure. It has brought us together. It has brought out the best in our skills, and it's helped us to focus more clearly under your leadership on giving back and service to humanity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.